So how feasible is it to actually flip domains? And how feasible is it to actually buy an expired domain that has some SEO juice and build out a great site? These are two of the topics that we dive in today during the podcast with my guest, Sean Markey. Sean is somebody that has been buying expired domains for a long time. He's sold several domains, flipped those, if you will. And he's also really where his expertise is building out sites on expired domains. And so this is a subject that's really interesting to me because if you're able to find a domain that has lots of great links pointing to it, you can potentially skip a lot of the sandbox, a lot of that early process of not really ranking in Google. And so Sean has been able to do this, and we share a couple of the examples that he has for six-figure sites that he's sold in the last couple of years, building out sites on these expired domains. And so we talk about how to find these expired domains, how to actually get it at auction, the process of building out a site on an expired domain, and just everything surrounding this subject. And so Sean is a really smart guy. I hope you enjoy this interview. If you want to follow along with what he's doing, he actually publishes a weekly newsletter where he shares some of the most powerful domains coming to auction in the coming week, as well as several case studies on domains and what happened to those domains. You can go to sem.substack.com if you want to join his newsletter. Also, he started something called Juice Market. It's juicemarket.com. It's a marketplace to buy and sell SEO domains. And so those are a couple places that you can go. But overall, I really do think that you'll learn quite a bit during this interview. Sean has a lot of great actionable tips and strategies to share. Hey, Sean, welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it is good to connect. Good to have you on the show here. I put out some feelers on Twitter and on my Facebook group for people that are really into domain flipping. I was thinking, hey, it would be a cool little case study, a cool little project, or just to make a little extra money if I could buy some domains and then sell them, a short time later. I put the word out, hey, is anybody doing this? Your name came up. Sean Markey's the guy you got to talk to about domain flipping. So let's jump into that. For people that maybe don't know who you are, why don't you just give us a short, 1 minute background of sort of your business and SEO experience?
Yeah, sure. I went to college to be a teacher, and that lasted just a couple of years before I got hooked on marketing, SEO, kind of went the 4-hour work week route that almost everyone did.
Yep.
That was about 2011. And then I proceeded to kind of fail my way forward for the next decade or so, just doing a bunch of site build outs, trying to learn SEO through doing. I tried to start my own agency, which failed. I'm not a good agency owner, I guess. I ended up working for Travis Jameson at Smash. It's called Smash Digital now. Before kind of going my own way in 2019, I had a lot of success building out a CBD affiliate site that really took off. Kind of just before the market peaked. So it was really good timing. Mm-hmm. And I ended up selling that site. And ever since then, I've been doing, building out sites, especially on expired domains. That's kind of my area of expertise, I guess. I write a weekly newsletter on finding expired domains and talking about what you can do with them. And I just launched an SEO domain marketplace where people can list. You can go and also buy domains that have authority.
Yeah. And we're going to jump into that a little bit, but how did you really get started buying expired domains? Like what sort of led you down that route?
Yeah. So when I got fired from teaching, my teaching job back in 2013, I ended up getting a like a junior SEO marketing job at a local Salt Lake City marketing design agency. And all they had me doing all day long was he would buy these domains with juice from wherever he was getting them, probably some shady marketplace. And he would hand them to me. I would install WordPress. I would spin up a couple articles using a terrible content spinner and add a couple images, some alt tags, link to the client site, and just off to the next one. And that's all I did all day long
so you're basically building out PBNs for this agency to link to their client sites.
Yep. That's where I got started. And you know, I when I left the agency, I kind of took that with me and tried to offer it as a service back in like 2014 when it was kind of in fashion, but there weren't as many you know, services where you can just spin up several PBNs quite easily. So it was kind of a novel service at the time. I did a couple of those, and that's, I mean, just looking for domains that were expiring, that have authority, that have juice, is how I got into it. And eventually stopped trying to build these really terrible PBNs on them, you know, with like 4 articles, it just super obvious, terrible PBN sites, and started trying to, you know, build something more valuable, maybe something more toward the authority side.
Right. Let's go into jump into that for a second. What kind of success have you had then as you've built more legitimate sites, right, on these expired domains? You started, you know, building real sites and trying to make money. What sort of success have you seen doing that yourself?
Yeah, it took a little while for you know, I guess to develop all the skills needed to do that. But in 2019, I sold an affiliate site for well into the 6 figures. Can't really say some solid numbers, but it was a very good exit.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, you know, definitely life-changing at the time.
Awesome.
And after that, I just kept going. Like, you know, it's like, okay, I've got all this money. Like, what do I do now? It's like, I'll just keep doing this. So I continued to build out these authority sites, kind of affiliate sites. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we can talk about the line between the two, but they were definitely collecting affiliate money. And I had some success with that through 2020. The December algorithm update in 2020 really kind of murdered a couple of my sites because they're very affiliate heavy. Yeah. Lesson learned, I guess. Yeah. But I still managed to sell. I sold one of the sites I was working on for lower mid 5 figures, and I sold one for 6 figures, about 130, I guess, 130,000. Awesome. Yeah, and that particular one is interesting because it was built entirely on an expired domain that I picked up the domain in May, and I built a site on it, and I sold it in December for 6 figures.
Wow! So a period of 7 months, 6 months, something like that.
Yeah, it was a fun ride.
Yeah. And that's what's interesting, right? I mean, I guess that's the whole reason that you might want to pick up an SEO sort of age domain, is that you skip that sandbox, you skip that process, right? Is that normal? Do you see that kind of time and time again? Is that you buy a domain, if you produce content, you can start ranking just a lot quicker?
I mean, yes, kind of, if you know what you're doing. I guess that's the caveat. I picked up for comparison, I picked up a brand new, like, hand registered domain name at the beginning of 2020, and I built it out all through the year. It was just like kind of like a side project. It was very super niche down, like a geo targeted affiliate keyword, I guess. And I mean, I built some great links to that. It had good content, and it took a solid year to really do anything. And that's just the journey, like a new domain takes in the index, getting indexed and getting ranked. So yeah, like picking up, you know, a name that is dropping through the expired auctions, or that you pick up from someone else. It's kind of just has it sitting around. Yeah, you just skip that. And if you build good content and you build some good links, kind of take care of the site, it can definitely start ranking fairly quickly by comparison.
Right. And so I want to jump into some of those strategies here in a second. But first, kind of the original reason I asked you to come on the interview here is because I was kind of interested in seeing if anybody out there was actually just flipping domains, right? And sort of trying to understand the feasibility of, can you actually buy a domain, right? Maybe even hand register an expired domain, and then turn around and sell it within 30 days, right? Like, say you buy it for $10, and even if you're selling it for $100 or $200, like, is that feasible and is that repeatable? And so let's jump into that. Like, what are your thoughts on sort of short-term domain flipping?
I definitely think it's possible to do that. I've seen people like that I follow on Twitter talk about, hand registering a name and selling it 6 months later for like $4,000. And it's just like, it's an incredible story. Like, that's a huge, there's a huge amount of profit.
Yep.
It really depends on, I think it's not a very passive venture, like these people are reaching out to companies and saying, hey, I've got this name. Are you interested in purchasing it? Like, here's the landing page for it. Like, you have to do a lot of outbound outreach, I think, in order to do that, unless you get lucky here and there. Sure. That's definitely possible. But I mean, you have to think about it from the people you're outreaching to. Like, if they already have a business, like, and they wanted this domain, like, wouldn't they have already registered it? And that's not always the case. They might not have thought about this avenue, or having a domain that's defensible for some reason, like that helps defend their brand. And you have to be careful also of like registering something that can be kind of trademarked, or that infringes on someone's trademark, because like that's true domain squatting, And also, if you register something with Nike in it and you try to approach Nike about buying this domain from you, that they're just going to file a UDRP and take it from you.
Right. Not going to end well.
Right. So it's definitely possible. I think it's possible, but it'll take some work. Like, you'll have to really kind of go out there and try and get these names in front of the people that could find them valuable.
Okay. So you don't think it's possible or really very repeatable to buy a domain and then just be able to go list it on GoDaddy auctions or somewhere else. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to do a lot of the salesmanship. You're going to have to go sell it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can, if you know what you're doing, you can register a bunch of domains and just kind of forward, like, if somebody visits that domain, forward it to like a landing page, like, hey, this domain's for sale, right. Make an offer or whatever. I think it becomes a numbers game. Like, how many do you have? How many, what percentage of people are looking for a name that might visit yours? I think a good way to think about it is like the barrier to entry to doing that is like almost zero. Like, you have to, have $1,000 to buy 100 domains or something.
Right.
So, I mean, it could be a good learning opportunity, mm-hmm. Get on the phone, try and sell some names, but I don't think it's a good passive way to make money in the short term. Mm-hmm. If you leave up the pages for a while, but really, like, a lot of the good domains that would make a good brand, like, have been thought of, have been registered, are expiring. And so if you're going that route, it's very competitive, like, in the good idea. Like, if you find a decent brand, like, you might be able to get away with winning it for $12 every now and then, but usually there's a bunch of other people trying to do that too.
They'll recognize the opportunity as well.
Right. It is a low barrier to entry. You buy it for $12, you turn around and try and sell it for $1,000 or whatever. Like, if it's a good name, that's attractive. Right.
So maybe what is feasible then in terms of just domain flipping, without building out sites? What's even if you are having to spend some money in auctions, is there opportunity, right, in domain flipping? And what would be that route? If somebody, if you're going to tell a listener, hey, here's the opportunity for domain flipping, here's the path. What's that path?
For me personally, my advice would be to kind of niche down into a specific vertical. Like, for instance, one of my passions in life is the cannabis industry. And so I own about 200 domains within that space. They're not all great, amazing, $100,000 brands or something. They're mostly brand names that I picked up for, between 12 and $150.
And when you say brand names, like, what do you mean?
So something that could represent a company name, like, for instance, just a crappy example, like if you had jobsincannabis.com or something, like that's not really a brand. But if you had like THC staffing or something like that, it's more of a brand name. Like, you could wear it on your polo shirt to work.
Gotcha. So you're trying to predict, like, hey, this sounds really brandable. Mm-hmm. Nobody has it now, but I think somebody would love this.
Right. So a name like, I think one I have is speedycanna.com. Like, that's a great brand for like a delivery company, for instance. But like cannabisdelivery.net, not a great brand. You know what I mean? Like no one's calling their company that. So that's what I mean when I say brands.
Yep. Okay.
So when you really get involved in the specific space, you start learning like this is what people like to use when they think of this industry, like, sticking with the cannabis industry, because it's the one I know. Like, not that many people that are starting businesses use the word pot or weed. So if you're out, registering name like leafyweed.com or something, like no one wants that name because no one calls themselves that. So finding, kind of getting into a specific vertical can be a really helpful way to do that, because then you're really registering something people will actually use.
Yeah. And are you hand registering these? Like, are you just sort of thinking like, hey, this looks good, or are you doing something else?
So when I first started getting into this, maybe 2016, 2017, I was able to hand register some of them. But like, as that industry has grown, like, so did everyone else. And so now it's just a matter of like finding them, going to auction and trying to win them. Just, having the biggest budget or wanting it the hardest out of everyone who's bidding. So there, I would say there could be opportunities in emerging industries, things that haven't hit kind of national scale or have national attention, like maybe NFTs about 4 or 5 months ago would have been a really good time to start registering those kind of brands. Totally. But now if you try and look for those at auction, they're all way overpriced.
Yep.
Because everyone's trying to.
Okay. So I like that. So niching down, understanding a niche, and then maybe trying to predict or getting involved in emerging markets, right? Before everybody else, before it explodes, possibly, is a good idea. And so, what sort of prices are you paying? Like, if you're going to auction and looking at domains, like how much money do you end up spending sometimes?
So I'm going to answer this question as if I'm in like 2018, 2017, and not now, because I've earned a lot of money from selling sites. Like, I'm only going after the domains that are like on the more expensive side currently.
Okay.
So I don't think that's helpful, but maybe like if you can pick up a name, I mean, the prevailing advice is you make money on the buy. If you buy a name for $15 and you can sell it for $1,000, that's great. If you bought it for $600 and sell it for $1,000, I mean, that's still cool. But like, how long did you have that 600 locked up for? So I think it's reasonable to try and buy some names for between like, $12 is what the cheapest price on GoDaddy auctions, expired auctions, which has the best inventory of anywhere. And then, all the way up to like 100, 150, like, if you can do that and you have kind of, I mean, I wouldn't start at 150 if you don't know what you're doing. Definitely start on the lower side. But yeah, that seems like a a really solid range to try and be picking these up for the purpose of flipping.
Yeah. And so how do you go about selling these then, right? So let's say you do spend $150. It sounds like a, good, let's call it a brandable NFT, something or another domain, right? Like, how do you sell it? And how long do you have to wait usually?
Yeah, the waiting can take several years for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I personally haven't sold a ton of names, but being in the industry and seeing what the people are doing, like I can tell you if it's a good brand, you can go to a site like brandbucket.com or squadhelp.com. And these are like brand marketplaces. So let's say someone's trying to start like a website selling fishing accessories, for instance. They might go to Brand Bucket and say, hey, I want to start an e-commerce store that sells, lures and whatever. I need a name. And then people have registered names and they've listed them on Brand Bucket. And then in a contest, you can have people submit names related to fish. So like, something like fisheria.com, which is one I saw the other day going to auction. Like they'll submit a bunch of names and then they'll choose one and they'll buy it. You can also just plain list it at Brand Bucket. So like when you, or Squad Help does this exact same thing. You type in fish, it just returns a bunch of names that have to do like that are tagged with fishing or the sea or whatever.
Right.
So they've spent a lot of money developing a marketplace and developing kind of an audience of people that are going to look for those names. They do take a nice percentage of your name for doing that, but like you don't have to build the audience. They already did. That's kind of the value prop trade-off. You could also go to a site like dan.com. I really like that. It's just a place to list domain names, and they also act as like the escrow middleman. So it's really easy to sell a name there. And then there's afternick.com, which is owned by GoDaddy. And if you list a name there at Afternick, like GoDaddy puts it into their system and it goes out to a bunch of other registrars. So like if you put a name for sale for 500, let's just say Fisheria, because I just talked about that. You list it for $500 at Afternick. Someone goes to, I don't know, like Namecheap or porkbun.com or whoever their partners are. There's hundreds. And they type in, fisheria.com because they thought of that, like, oh, that'd be a great name. And then it pops up. You can register this for $500. It just puts it right in front of the person. So it's kind of it's a no-brainer to list your domain that you have at Afternick because it goes in so many places.
Right. Yep. So let's go back to doing what you're doing, which is spending more time, finding these expired SEO domains, and then you're building out sites. Let's talk about those strategies for actually kind of building out the sites and how you're using the domain. And then I want to jump into and probably spend the rest of the interview talking about, okay, how do we find these, domains with links and et cetera, right? So what's sort of the strategies that you use? Let's say you've got the domain, you feel like it's got a lot of sort of SEO juice. Like what do you do from there?
So my best piece of advice is to really treat this like, a brand that you love, a business that you're pouring a lot into. Like, don't write a bunch of really crappy content. Don't put up any spun content. Like, you really want to treat this like, a well-loved site. So when I'm building a site, like the first thing I do is put up maybe like 10, 15 posts right away. Just really well written, really well optimized. I personally use ClearScope, but a lot of people use Surfer or
Market Muse or Phrase or
Yep. So just write a really optimized piece of content targeting a keyword. It's always a good idea to try and match the content that you're posting with the content that used to be on a site if you're really taking advantage of that authority. You don't want to put content for an SEO blog on a site that used to be about fishing. Like there's not a lot of, overlap of the topical relevancy.
Right.
So you want to just put up some content related to the content that used to be there. I personally would say don't do an archive rebuild. I mean, you can get into trouble for doing that, or not trouble, but like, your site could be, I don't know, tagged or whatever the process is for that. Yeah, just write really, really optimized content related to the site, the stuff that used to be there. And then what I always do is go to Hrefs, put in the name, find the pages, like sort by, it's like best by links is what I do.
Yep.
And then look at the pages that have a significant number of links. I mean, it depends on how many, you don't want to do this for like 100 pages, but like if there's a lot, maybe the top 10 or 15, and see, can you write a blog post or a page that is the exact same topic that used to be? And if you can, just make that the same URL, or make it a more optimized URL if they were terrible at SEO, and then 301 that using, like, I use the Rank Math plugin or the redirection plugin, whatever.
Yeah.
And so you're taking advantage of the URLs that really have a lot of juice.
Right.
What you don't want to do is, what some people do with PBNs, and they like redirect every 404 to the homepage. I mean, don't make it obvious, like if whoever was, registering this to build a business on, and they weren't an SEO, like, would they do that? Probably not. You want to look natural. So redirect the pages if you can't build on the exact same URL. If the page is not something you can reproduce, or maybe they had like a our company page or something in addition to the about page, or they had an investors page, like, just 301 that back to the blog page or to the about us page. So you want to kind of spread out the redirections. You don't want them all going to the homepage.
Yep.
That's what I do. And then just, do some interlinking generously. Shout out to Link Whisper.
Awesome.
Go through the pages, build a bunch of internal links, and, like, really put in some time and some effort and money, and make it look like a nice site. Like, that's my best advice. It's not rocket science. Just build a good site.
Yeah. Build a good site, but then take the pages that have already got these powerful links, right? And kind of do some link sculpting, right? Either, like you said, try to build the exact type of content that was already on that page, if you can, if it makes sense, if it's feasible. Otherwise, redirect it where it makes sense, or, anyways, sort of use those internal links to sort of sculpt where the SEO sort of juice is flowing, or where it should flow, right? To get to new content that you're writing or something like that, right?
Yep. And then, like, take, I mean, I would say cast a wide net when you write that content, like, within your niche. Like, try and just go after a bunch of different subtopics. And, if you did a good job, some of them will start ranking. Some of them start ranking, like, really well. It's surprising. And then just double down on that. Like, I'm just going to build out this whole silo or whatever of all these related topics. Or now I'm going to take this 1,000-word post and make it a 3,500-word post. Like, double down on the stuff that's working.
Yeah.
And then use that to lift the other pages.
Yep. And then beyond that, at that point, you've kind of got, a standard niche site, authority site, all the other sort of tips and strategies apply, right? After that, right? Just building good content, maybe building new links, etc.
Yep.
So do you ever, you got your expired domain, you're building out a site. Do you ever then buy another expired domain and 301 that to the site itself? So you've kind of got two powerful expired domains.
Yes. Almost every time I do something like that, especially, I mean, that gets expensive. So it's right. For a site, you really are trying to build something big.
Yeah.
And like, you've got the affiliate relationships all worked out or something. You don't want to invest blindly and not be able to monetize.
Sure.
Which I've done. So don't do that.
Lesson learned there. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, the best way to do that, and that's, the other really good use of expired domains, is build out the site first. That's what a lot of people get wrong. When I see, people that have bought an expired domain I've covered in my newsletter, I go back in 3 weeks and it's just redirected to something else. The best thing to do is do the exact same thing I just said. Build it out, put up some really good pieces of content, do internal linking, add images, add a good logo, the way I think of it is put the content on that site that you want to live on your main site. Like that's how good the content should be.
Right.
You know, if you've got a blog or whatever you've been building for 10 years, you know, you're not putting garbage up, and you're going to 301 the site to it, put content of that caliber on it, so that when you acquire that site, in quotes, you just are taking over that content and it's living on your site. So that's the kind of standard you should be creating at. I say leave the site up for like 3 to 6 months, like get it ranking, build links to it. Once that content starts ranking on the first couple pages, it's a good time to, you know, acquire it to your site. But I'd say don't do it before that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're wasting the opportunity, or it's just not ready. Like the algorithm doesn't love that site yet. And if you 301, it's not going to do anything for you.
Right. So yeah, wait a good 6 months, something like that, maybe. And then potentially, 301, another expired domain to it. Very interesting. And how do you do those 301, another one, right? Are you doing the same thing in terms of building out some of the pages that were kind of on that new domain that you just bought as well? Or are you kind of just redirecting it all to the homepage?
So I do one-to-one redirects. So if it's domain.com/post1 on the second site, the site that you're going to 301, then, domain.com/post1 on the site you're referring it to. And you build 301s one by one.
Got it.
Like the plugin Rank Math, or I'm not sure if Yoast does that. Don't use Yoast. Rank Math, or
I think they do, but yeah.
Okay. I'm not a fan. I do love Rank Math. The redirection plugin works super well. Or if you know what you're doing, or if you have a hosting account somewhere where they're nice to you and they do things for you, you can just have them, if you don't know how, upload the redirects in htaccess.
Okay.
Any of those methods work, but it's all about doing one-to-one and not just doing the URL to the homepage.
Yeah.
The other tips I have for this that I've definitely learned the hard way: don't redirect. Let me see. So like when you're doing the redirect for domain2.com to domain1.com, don't redirect it to the homepage, because you're mixing a lot of anchor text. You're kind of diluting the brand, and that can be confusing to an algorithm, for instance. So my suggestion is do a post like, hey, we've acquired such and such site. That's kind of the obvious way. Like I would say be careful about doing that a bunch, because it's going to become a signal at some point, even though that's the natural way. Like, if Nike acquired some other shoe brand, they would announce it on their blog. Like that's what you're kind of trying to mimic. But like I said, I think that's going to become easy to spot. So the other thing to do is 301 the homepage to a page like /blog or /about, or like just kind of a big general page. If you send it to the blog, it kind of distributes that authority, I think, over several different sites. And then any pages that don't match up or that you're not using, just send them to the blog or something is what I usually do, or to a post that's close enough. So you'll end up with 50 redirects or something like that. That's how I do it.
Okay. No, that's great tips. Very good. So let's jump into how to actually find these expired domains that have backlinks, that have SEO juice. I know this is like a huge topic. We're not going to learn it all here in the next 15 minutes or whatever, but let's get people started down that path. Where should they go? What do you do? How do you start a search if you're looking for a great expired domain?
Yep. So there's a couple tools that can help you. There are thousands and thousands of names that expire every day, and that's way too many to sort through. So you can use a tool like domcop.com, domcop.com, or spamzilla.io. And what they do is they have a list of all the names that are expiring, and they run them through a bunch of APIs. They run them through SimilarWeb, Alexa, Moz, stuff like that. So you can start filtering out like, anything that's below a 10 DA, I don't want to see, or anything, that has less than 50 referring domains. You can also, once you kind of know what you're doing, I'm not sure if you can do this on Spamzilla, but on DomCop, you can filter by majestic topical relevancy. So you can say only things in the like food kitchen topical relevancy. So it can become really powerful.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, that's the way I find them. And then you can go and do a little extra research, like make sure like it's not a trademarked name. You know, you don't want to deal with that. Make sure it hasn't been spammed to death in the past by putting it in a tool and looking at the anchor text, or putting it in archive.org and just flipping through a couple. I do a site search. So site : the domain name in Google. You can kind of see what's indexed. If nothing's indexed, it's not going to be a super helpful domain. Basically, the more that's indexed, the better chance of it being a powerful, helpful domain are.
Right.
You know, and the better chances that it wasn't penalized in a past life, because that's also not helpful. Same with throwing it into Ahrefs and looking at the keywords it's ranking for. Even if the keywords are terrible and it's like somebody's name that doesn't matter at all, like just the fact that it's ranking for that is a good sign. You know, so you can say, okay, this probably hasn't been penalized because this is ranking for the brand name or for the domain name or whatever stupid keyword. Like, that's a good sign. So just finding the ones that relate to your criteria and then doing a little extra research on them, and then going and trying to win it at the auction.
So to clarify, you're not buying domains that have expired, say, a year ago, right? That, you know, maybe they've got great links from the New York Times and other places, but they've been expired for a year. You know, they're now available to hand register, for example, right? You're looking for things that are hopefully still indexed in Google, haven't officially left the, the internet, right? They're at auction the first time, they're becoming available.
Think of it this way. Like if that domain name was valuable and you could build a site on it and extract a lot of value, like somebody would have registered it.
Yeah.
There's people like looking for these names every day. They're probably not missing a ton. So, I wouldn't recommend hand registering. That means it expired. It went all the way through the expiration process and is not just dropped and then picked up, which these are, which do tend to fare a little better with getting back in the index and getting content, ranking. There is kind of a debate when people are like, oh, expired domains don't work. Well, they do. Like, I guess you definitely want to get it on the drop and not fully expired, where it's been let go and you can hand register it.
Right.
And so like the biggest things are how many of the old pages are indexed and what kind of keywords is it ranking for?
Yeah. And is there like a minimum DR that you look for in particular? Higher's better?
I mean, usually higher's better, and higher's going to cost you. But for me, the most important thing, if you really know your niche, is what kind of links does it have from the authorities in your niche. The domain that I was talking about, I bought in May and sold in December, was like a DR 15 or 20. Like it was not hugely powerful, but almost every backlink was from an authority in the niche. It was incredibly relevant to that niche, and that's what won.
Yep. Relevance.
That's way more important than the pure power. I mean, if it has a bunch of links from Vice and the New York Times and stuff, like that's awesome. That'll definitely help. But if you're in the phishing space and you have a bunch of links from these whatever big DR 70 phishing sites or DR 50 even, like that's great. Go with that one.
Yeah. So how do you actually acquire the domain? I mean, I know it goes to auction, but what's some strategies there? Is there any strategies for winning auctions?
Yes. But I mean, so a lot of people don't know on GoDaddy, which is the place I buy from the most. Like I said, it has the biggest inventory. If you bid within the last 5 minutes, it kicks it back up 5 minutes. So a lot of people who don't have any experience try to like snipe these domains. They don't let that happen. You bid with 1 minute left, it kicks it back up to 5 minutes and something. So don't do that. Really, like my best advice is not super helpful. Like you have to really want the domain, and whatever your ceiling of a price is, it's going to probably be higher than that if it's a really good name. Like it's going to hurt, that's my experience. Like I was saying, that name that I bought last year in May, it went for almost $7,000. And I was like, okay, like during the auction, like 2,000. That's it. That's all I got to give to this. And then, a half hour later, it's like, okay, for real, 4,000 is as high as I'm going. And I just really wanted it because I really believed in that name. And I mean, how I said it kicks it 5 minutes up if you bid at the end. Like that auction went on like an extra hour. Me and two other people just kept bidding and just kept bidding. And so sometimes you got to just dig in your heels and you just say, I'm winning this name. I'll figure out the credit card bill next month. Like that's what it takes. That's not, you can't do that every time, but sure, if you find one that's perfect, like it's going to go for more than you think it is probably. And so if all you're doing is setting, putting in a bid at your max and walking away, you'll lose. Someone will get it for $5 more than your max. And that sucks. Like, could you have found another $50? Could you have found another $300 for this name? Like, that's getting to a dangerous place. That's kind of the auctions really play on your emotions.
They do
really, really hook into that FOMO.
That's why auctions work really well, right?
Yep.
It is.
Yeah. GoDaddy makes a lot of money from that.
Yeah. Yeah. So how much should people expect? I mean, obviously you're not paying $7,000 for every domain, right?
Right.
But to get a good expired or dropping, domain with links, like what's sort of a good range that people should expect? Should they expect probably a minimum $1,000?
Yeah. I mean, from I look at auctions every day. I study the auctions that have closed from the previous week, the week after in my newsletter. And it sucks. Like they're expensive. You can get them for sure for under 1,000, but they're not going to be that great. The ones that really are well indexed, that have a lot of really strong topical links, that are ranking for a lot of keywords, are not going cheap. And like people understand the value now. And so, yeah, it's not that part's not great.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Yeah. And so anything else I know there's a whole lot. I mean, you mentioned a couple of tools that you're using to sort of analyze a lot of these domains that are expiring, but just any other sort of strategies or tips, somebody that wants to dive in and really kind of find some of these domains on their own, like anything else they should be looking at, either sites or tools or just anything else?
One way to acquire names that might be cheap, especially if you're, really niching down and you're not going after CBD or some awful keyword like that, where everyone's spending a ton of money. Like look for sites that are kind of abandoned, but that have been live for a while. Like age is one thing you really can't fake in the index, in Google's index. Like find a site that's been around for 5 years and they're just not updating it, and make it like try to buy it for $500,
So just reach out to them.
Yeah. I mean,
essentially, right?
It's kind of a shot in the dark, but like if you can get a domain before it goes to auction, you'll get it for way cheaper. I haven't been super successful with that, to be honest. Like that's just if you have more time than money kind of thing, like go for that, go on that route. If you're just getting into it, I would say try and find something fairly cheap and, build it out yourself and learn the hard way, like learn by doing. Don't go out and buy a $5,000 domain and then do a terrible job. Like, yes, you can make a lot of money, you could be very successful, but like know what you're doing first before you really go all in is my advice.
Yeah. Great advice. I agree. I wanted to ask if there's any other sort of, you've already mentioned a few along the way, but are there any other sort of like bad practice or do not do this if you are trying to build a site on an expired domain? Like what's a mistake maybe that you see other people making, right? You mentioned a few about some of the way things are 301 redirected and try to make the content relevant, but anything else that you see that people are just kind of messing things up?
I see, like, I mean, I think I mentioned this, but one of the big ones is when people buy a name that is in one niche and try and make it relevant to another niche. Like that just, like that's defeating the purpose.
Yeah.
You know, the point of doing it. I would say definitely don't do that. I can't really think of anything else. Like one thing I've learned by doing a lot of these build outs and making a lot of mistakes is that, you know, core algorithm updates excluded, Google's index can be very forgiving. Like I have acquired, like I had a site, it was doing really well, like just under 100,000 visits per month. And I was like, this site's great. It was super aged, but I was like, I hate the brand. I don't love it. I want to make it this other name that I picked up at auction. It's a much better brand. And so I did a whole 301 redirect acquisition rebranding, and traffic went from about 3,000 a day to maybe like 100.
Ooh.
It was really bad.
Ouch.
And I kept it up for 2 weeks because I was working with other people. Like, what is going on here? Why did this happen? Like the domain wasn't, it wasn't toxic. Like it was fine. You know, it passed all my checks, but I don't even know what happened. It just did not take. And 2 or 3 weeks later, I reversed the redirection and it popped right back up, right where it was before, and then continued to do even better because now it had the name that I had redirected it to redirected back to it. So it was giving it some extra juice. So that ended up being like an interesting technique. But yeah, like, you know, make some hopefully less on a less valuable domain than I did, like make some mistakes and try it out. Like the index is pretty forgiving. Like you can roll something back after a couple weeks or even a couple months I've done, and it sticks.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about Juice Market. Why did you create juicemarket.com?
So, you know, I've been watching these auctions go up and up and up in price. And I was like, okay, there's a huge demand for these names. Talking to other SEOs, like everyone wants to find a good name to build on. Not everyone loves auctions. I don't think anyone loves auctions.
Right.
So we thought like, hey, like, you know, Travis Jameson is who I kind of partnered up with to create this. He's a really good SEO. He's got a bunch of abandoned projects. You know, you're optimistic. You're like, oh, I'm buying this site. I'm definitely going to start something. And then like 7 months later, you're like, yeah, I'm doing like 15 other things.
Right. Never got around to that. Yeah.
So there wasn't a good marketplace to sell that name to people who understood the value. You know, you can try and go in like a Facebook group and, you know, try and get a couple thousand for it or something, but like there wasn't an established marketplace for that. And also auctions are terrible. That was kind of our core beliefs in starting this. And I mean, it's definitely a scratch your own itch product. So we created a marketplace where people that had these valuable names, you know, that have authority and are aged in some cases, it comes with the website. And it's a place where you can list that for, you know, close to what it's worth. That's up to you. And then also a place where kind of, you know, doing some outreach to and some marketing at SEOs. Like, hey, you want to expire, you know, you want a domain with juice, come to Juice Market. So, you know, it's not easy to create like a two-sided marketplace, but there's definitely a need to sell some of these domains for people like me who have got way too many, too optimistic, and people who are trying to buy these and don't want to, you know, suffer through an auction or 15 auctions and lose each one. Like that really sucks.
Right. So I really like the marketplace aspect of it, right? So that if I mean, this could be potentially somebody's way to flip domains in a way, right? If they're finding great domains at auction, they just want to turn around and sell it. They go to Juice Market and potentially get a little bit of a markup because maybe SEOs are there looking and, you know, see the value of it and will buy it. So I love that. And then I assume you're also, because you're looking at domains all the time and, you know, between you and Travis, are you buying several domains and then just go ahead and listing those as well on Juice Market to kind of keep inventory up on the site itself?
We definitely seeded it with about 5 or so domains each, but like that's
Okay.
expensive. It's
Yeah.
expensive to do that. So yeah, we only have a couple names each really, and
Okay.
people got the idea of it really quick. You talk to any SEO who's been operating for 5 years, like they have several names they bought and intended to build on, or half-assed built something out.
Yeah.
So people had the names ready to list.
Okay. So you getting quite a few listings then? I know it's only been around what, a month?
Yeah, maybe a month. Yeah, we've had a ton of listings. I think almost 400 people signed up so far. Like,
nice.
It's really, it's in the very, very beginning stages of
Sure.
getting traction, but yeah, people seem to get it.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. So people can check that out, juicemarket.com. And then I know you have a newsletter as well. Why don't you let people know what you're doing with the newsletter and where they can go to follow that?
Yep. So I started in 2019 before everyone else who publishes a similar newsletter these days. Basically, I look at the domains going to auction for this week, and it comes out every Wednesday. So it's from like Wednesday through Tuesday of next week, and it says like these are the 7 best domains going to auction. They have a lot of authority. They have a big history. I talk about what the site used to be, what kind of links it has, what I would do, like how I would build this site out, or how I would use it to 301 to another site. And then I cover a couple of like really good brands going to auction as well. Because sometimes, you acquire a terrible domain like a .org with 3 dashes. Like it's not a great brand. You want to brand that into something else. I cover a couple of really good brands you might pick up for a future 301. As well as just trying to share stuff that's worked for me, case studies. I look at like, maybe a name that I covered 6 months ago and saying like, oh, like this name expired in the newsletter, is bought for this much. Like, here's what they did with it, and here's how it's going. Like, it's not going well because they just 301'd it right away or whatever. Just try to be like a way to share my knowledge, because I've done so much with expired domains. I've made so many mistakes. Like, just trying to be like, these are the names that are the best this week, and this is what I would do with them. And it's a Substack newsletter. It's at SEM, which is actually my initials, but search engine marketing kind of
works well.
Yep, sem.substack.com. That's where people can go. I got a free version and I got a paid version.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I like that. For people that maybe don't have as much time or aren't as involved in looking at domains as you are, right? They can get like, here's the top 7 or 8 or whatever domains that are available. If they want to go just read your newsletter and pick up a domain, they can do that.
Yep.
Plus get all your insights, which I'm looking forward to. I got your first one, of course, this past week, and good stuff for sure.
Thanks.
I love reading about this kind of stuff. So don't we all though, right? In the SEO world. So it's very good. So Sean, thanks for coming on the Niche Pursuits podcast, sharing your experiences and your strategies for finding expired domains and just everything. Really appreciate it. Is there any other place you'd like to send people, or just any sort of parting words that maybe you have?
My parting advice is like, just jump in and do it. Don't max out all your credit cards or anything, but like that's the journey I took. Like, you learn by doing, and you learn by failing. So like, grab a name for $50. It's not the best name ever, and just start building on it and see what happens. That's what I'd say. As for sharing anything else, I'm pretty active on Twitter, and it's just my name at Sean Markey. So I would say, go find me there and listen to all the dumb things I have to say about SEO, or all the customer, service complaints I have. That's where they all end up. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. Thanks again for sharing your wisdom here. People can follow along at those places. And I agree. Yeah. People should just get started. That's where you're going to learn the most, is just taking some action and learning the ropes yourself. So appreciate all the advice, Sean.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.